You don't build courage by avoiding what you're afraid of. You build courage by moving through it.
Mm.
And I'll say this about people approaching retirement is most of us looking back at our work life, it wasn't a bed of roses, right? I mean,
Right.
it wasn't all good and success and I got what I wanted and all, probably not.
Right.
But I can say when I go out in nature, nature is fair. It's tough, but it makes no distinctions. What do you got?
Right. Or a rainstorm's going to hit everybody the same.
Exactly.
Hey, dear listeners, we need to let you know that Kevin and Stephanie offer investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations to any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Now let's get on with the show. This is Take Back Retirement, the show that's redefining retirement for women. Retirement is an old-fashioned cultural concept. We want to reclaim the word so you can make it your own. I'm Stephanie McCullough, financial planner and founder of Sofia Financial, where our mission is to reduce women's money stress and empower them to make wise, holistic decisions so they can get back to living their best lives. Kevin Gaines is my longtime colleague with deep knowledge in the technical stuff, investments, taxes, and retirement plan rules. He's a little bit geeky and quantitative. I'm a little bit touchy-feely and qualitative. Together, through conversations and interviews, we aim to give you the information and motivation you need to move forward with confidence. We're so glad you're here. Coming to you semi-live from the beautiful West Lakes Office Park in suburban Philadelphia, this is Stephanie McCullough and Kevin Gaines of Sofia Financial and American Financial Management Group. Say hello, Kevin.
Hello, Kevin.
Today, we're talking to Diane Gansauer. Diane is a career changer. She changed in her late 50s, as she'll tell us, to become a celebrant at memorial gatherings. For a time, she held one of the few full-time funeral celebrant positions in the United States. In addition, as she entered retirement, Diane embarked on a remarkable series of long-distance hikes, finishing the Continental Divide Trail, 3,100 miles from the Mexico border to the U.S.-Canada border. In culmination, she wrote a book about these experiences, just published this year, called The Waypoints from 400 Farewells and 3,000 Miles, chronicling the insights that overlapped from her experiences as a hiker and celebrating more than 400 lives. Diane's now enjoying a new chapter in her life, encouraging people in their senior years to continue being physically active, vibrant in mind and spirit, and positively involved in their communities, which fits the themes of our podcast so well. Let's dive into our conversation with Diane. Diane Gansauer, welcome to Take Back Retirement.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We are so excited to talk to you. You, at one point in life, made a big transition in the work that you were doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, I had a very successful career working for nonprofit organizations, later in that working for state government in the field of land and wildlife conservation. And I ascended to the deputy director of a state agency here in Colorado called Great Outdoors Colorado, which oversees grant programs, providing funding for various kinds of outdoor fun, actually, as well as conservation. So things like parks and recreation, state parks, also wildlife. The Division of Wildlife at that time, when I was working there, was the Division of Wildlife and Habitat Conservation Program. So I rose to a pretty prominent position in an agency that was granting multimillion-dollar every year. And I enjoyed much of that work, but it also became highly political, small p political.
Yes.
Not state and national politics, but I think everybody who has ever worked in an office knows what I'm referring to.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't enjoy that, nor did I feel that I was particularly good at it. So I transitioned with that in mind. For a while, I went from that position of a deputy director to the state's Office of Parks and Wildlife, Department of Parks and Wildlife. I worked there in their habitat protection program. And what I found I liked best was really the work one-on-one with families. And that was a life lesson for me. To frankly, take it down a notch from something so political and highly visible in the state to something that was more personal. And guess what? My next big, truly big transition was to something very personal. And I can't remember a political day in my life after I did that.
Oh, that sounds delightful.
Oh, I became more effective and a happier person.
Oh, I like that. So how did you find your way to your next chapter?
Well, it comes down to the old adage, it's who you know.
Mm.
And that helped a lot. I was in a very visible position, truly. And in the course of that, I met a lot of people, one of whom was a very wealthy individual who had founded and was the chair of the board of the largest provider of funeral and cemetery services in North America, maybe in the world, but at least in North America. And he was a very philanthropic individual who had enormous properties in Colorado and elsewhere. And his team of people trying to protect significant wildlife habitat on his ranch. I'm going to leave out some of the identifying details,
Yes.
but on his ranch, were aware that I was occasionally officiating funerals and memorial services. Now, granted, when he became aware of that, I had to be very careful. It was toward the end of my career in that field anyway. I had determined that I was going to leave. I was very careful of not a conflict of interest because we had been granting funds to protection of his property for many years. It was such a large property. It was very important habitat. So, but we were drawing that to a close around the time that he became aware that I was doing this. He had already, his property had received its final grant to protect, I'm trying to remember how many acres. I think it was around 14,000 acres. It was very large.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like the Wizard of Oz becoming aware of one of the munchkins.
Are you calling yourself a munchkin?
He called me over to the picnic table where we had put together a thank you event. He is, as far as I know, the largest donor of land value. We were putting conservation easements on his property in the history of Colorado. And he called me over and said, Diane, in his thick Texas accent, how can I help you? And I said to myself inside my brain, do not blow this. Because I had training in ceremony work and storytelling work, gathering stories, presenting stories. And that's the essence of the ceremonies that I've done now for more than a decade. And he was aware that I was trying to go into that line of work at the same time that his company was trying to establish a Celebrant program. And that was to provide memorial services and gatherings for people who, unlike many people in previous generations, did not have a pastor to call on. It's a demographic fact that the entire world, well, maybe not the entire world, I shouldn't say. I don't know how the penguins in Antarctica feel, but pretty much everywhere else is drawn away from organized religion, membership in organized religious denominations and churches of various kinds. But that doesn't mean we don't want to honor someone we've loved and lost. So his company was building a program. I was right smack at the beginning of it to build a program that offered services, celebrant services, professional ceremony people. And I founded that program in Metro Denver for his roughly 12 funeral homes. And they took me in and my life changed for the better. It was a very wise decision. Been a happier person ever since.
So you mentioned that you had training in storytelling and story gathering.
Yes.
how did you embark on that, right? It sounds like it was happening even while you were in your government career.
Yes, because I was going kind of nuts in that in that work. To put it mildly, I was getting increasingly unhappy, and that was my sign. It's time to close this chapter and get out.
Uh-huh.
But meanwhile, I had taken training with the Celebrant Foundation and Institute. Their program has now transitioned to it's called Natural Transitions Institute, NTI. And those folks, those wonderful people were and still are training people in ceremony work, which is story-based and also engages in familiarizing you with rituals that would be personal, but not religious specifically, because we don't go out there and pretend to be part of a religious clergy that we're not a part of. That's inappropriate.
Right.
But there are simple rituals such as forming a bouquet at a memorial service, lighting a candle. These are universal things one can do to show honor. As for the storytelling, I aligned myself with a mentor who is a professional storyteller. And I've stayed in touch with her throughout the years. We're having lunch later this week. This person helped me hone the skills of gathering story from people and presenting that in an authentic way, but specific to ceremony, not stand-up routines. I wasn't trying to be a performer. I was trying to be a ceremony person who honored people authentically for the sake of the family and for the sake of blessed memory. So that's where I sought that out. It's a little easier now. There are more celebrants out there, but I personally think, because of course I think this, I'm on their faculty, that the Natural Transitions Institute offers the best training out there. Of course I think that.
How did you come across this? Because I mean, if you talk to people who want to do this type of presentation or public speaking or stuff like that, ceremonies for end of life doesn't strike me as like one of the top 10 things
one of the
people
obvious
automatically think of.
Yes. Well, back then, which was, around 2013 is when I first started the training, I believe. I found an ad in a magazine.
There we go.
But today, I would say most people might find this, honestly, by attending a memorial gathering or hearing from a friend who did, where they said, wow, that was good. We, unfortunately, almost all of us have had experience with funerals, so we came away saying, did they even know this person? It just didn't set right.
Yeah.
It seemed canned. And I am not blaming clergy for this.
No.
We are specialists. Clergy are generalists. They're taking care of a host of issues in their flock, let's say.
Right.
But if you've gone to a good celebrant-led ceremony, you honest to goodness do know the difference. It's personal. It's centered on the person's life story.
So interesting. So you see an ad in a magazine.
Yes.
And it feels like, the old days when you would like write away for the decoder ring or something. So,
yes, it was even
correspondence
a printed magazine. And I signed up for the class and then decided at first, Kevin, that I would pursue this on the side. This was, I suppose the term is a side hustle.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very reverent.
No, it doesn't.
But it was something I did on the side while working full time, because this became my creative outlet. It became my happier place in my daily life. Obviously, if it was on the side of a busy full-time job, I was only able to do ceremonies now and then. And shifting into, or being invited to shift into doing this full-time was a huge leap. It's intense work. I'm sure anybody can imagine. It's intense work. It's highly focused. When you first start, you're on kind of the frayed edges of your emotions, which you must get on top of. When some of these life stories maybe touch a little close to home. And honestly, it was a significant decrease in my income.
Yeah.
So before taking that, it wasn't poverty wages. It was a decent wage, but I was in senior positions. I was making a six-figure salary. I have not made that since, and I don't care. We were okay financially, But before I made that change, I had a conversation with my husband, my partner in life, and said, "Are you okay with this?" And it wasn't a really lengthy conversation. He very early in the conversation said, "When was the last time you were happy with your work?"
Ooh.
And basically he was saying, "I need you to be happy with your work," which tells me right there I was bringing a little too much of my unhappiness home.
It's hard not to.
I own that. I did that for too long. And this was going to be a decent income, but we were all right. And we were an empty nester. And
Yeah.
I had more leeway to make these choices with my husband's support, which I needed and wanted.
Yep.
So that made
Yep.
it easy.
Sometimes having that outside perspective hits
Yes.
home, right? When's the last time you were
Yes.
happy with your work?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Now, starting, that was 2013, 2014, I think was the beginning of my full-time work as a celebrant. And since then, I'm semi to mostly retired, and things have changed again because I'm an author and public speaker. Isn't the average number of careers in an American's lifetime like 5, 4.5, or something like that? It's a lot.
It's definitely the number's gotten bigger when you look at the younger cohorts, right?
Yes.
Our generation, I think it's not quite as common, but we've talked to plenty of people who've reinvented themselves.
Oh, yes. And prior to go back to my ancient history, prior to working in land and wildlife conservation, I was managing performing arts companies.
Okay.
Which is still the nonprofit sector and kind of a business angle to it.
Right.
But I was around dancers and actors and musicians and perhaps that gives you a clue. It's like I was kind of missing a creative angle in life.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember your very first service?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I do.
How did they find you as an officiant?
Oh, my goodness. I think it was probably through the Celebrant Foundation, which had literally a tab that said how to find a celebrant.
Yes.
And then once you clicked that, you could look in your state. I think that was how they found me. And of course, I didn't say it was my first service.
No, of course not.
And of course, it was outdoors because it was in Colorado, because everything goes outdoors in Colorado. I could count on one hand the number of weddings, and I've done well over 100 weddings. On one hand, could I count the number that are indoors? Everybody goes outdoors. So, and I'm very comfortable as an outdoors person. So we were next to river, of course. I remember it well.
So just give us a little overview of what's the process? They find you as a celebrant. They say, Diane, we'd like you to do this for us. What does it look like? How do you go about working?
So now they're coming to me directly. They're coming through my website usually. Or if there are venues where I have worked a few times, they have my business card and they can refer people to me. It's one of those two sources, honestly. Or perhaps they saw me officiate a funeral, or they are a family I have worked with before and they come back. So those are the 4 ways. So after we work out the logistics of what they're looking for, and so I have in my mind how long it will take to prepare this. I give them my fee and say it's very reasonable, and they say yes. And so where we start from there is an interview, preferably in person. I can do this by Zoom, which I certainly did during the pandemic, but usually it's the old-fashioned way, and I meet them at their house. Or if it's through a funeral home, I meet them at the funeral home. And the interview is usually about 2 hours. It's lengthy. It's never less than an hour and a half. I'm also aware that the process of their talking through their loved one's life story is cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
And I just let that happen. It's not a form where if I need to know this and this and this and this. It's pretty open-ended questions. But by the time we're done, I have not only the highlights of events in that person's life, but I'm picking up on themes in their person's life. And that is essential. And honestly, you're less likely to get that without a trained professional. People don't think in those terms. They think in terms of, it's almost a resume. They think in terms of what happened when, and maybe how that person, if they knew them, how that person affected them, which is perfectly appropriate. I think broader than that, like what impact did this life have in a really broad way? And that's something that I can do that from an outsider's perspective. We get to know each other well, the family and I. But from outside, it's almost like what you studied in Greek tragedies in high school. You're in the everyman or the every person role who can look at the effect of this life on the whole community.
Mm.
So with that, then I go home and I start writing. And the writing process for me is several hours for each family. I bring a draft back to them, but I discuss it by Zoom. I want them to hear how it sounds. I don't email it to them unless they request it, because we're not passing out a document on the chairs of the people who are coming to the gathering.
Right.
You all know the human voice is very communicative. I want them to hear my voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I go through it in as much or as little detail as they need. I can just sense it by now after doing this for more than a decade. I always check some facts, of course, and pronunciations and names, make sure that it's all correct. I can see them and I can hear them, they can hear me. I can sense if they're comfortable. And usually they say that's all they need. That review is about an hour long. But by then, they know there will be no surprises.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. Usually with people who are doing this as not a professional, you're taking your chance at what might be said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to organize the other speakers, and the really high wire act is manage the open mic if there's an open mic. That takes some skill.
Yes.
Does that get awkward at times, I take it?
Yes. Sometimes it's perfectly fine, but to trust that it's just going to handle itself is very naive.
Yeah,
well, I'm sure it's a problem. Everybody has different opinions of what's appropriate or what is, necessary or.
Yes. Or someone who goes on and on and on. Or maybe they open the mic, I open the mic, and no one speaks first. Well, if I've done my job, I've probably planted somebody to go first. You know how awkward that can be. So the awkward part can happen in various forms. But what you want is, even for the people who are speakers, pre-assigned speakers, I talk with them ahead of the day of the ceremony to coach them a bit so that I don't overlap. I'm speaking before they are. So I don't want to steal their thunder. I want to know what they're going to cover. And I defer to them because they can speak in the first person. We talk about how long they will speak so that the whole ceremony is within the bounds of what the family wants.
Mm-hmm.
And my observation is, in the United States anyway, a typical ceremony is under an hour long. If you bring someone in from some cultures will expect it to be 3 hours long. It's a wonderful second or third or fourth career.
Well, it feels like having some life experience would certainly help you in that role.
Yes, that's true. There are very few celebrants who begin this kind of ceremony younger than 40 or even 50 years old because of that. Not that it's not possible younger than that, but life experience helps. But selfishly, for me, it's a beautiful experience for me to encounter these lives that I otherwise would not have encountered and therefore not have been inspired by.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what led to the writing of the book. It's like, look at this. I mean, these were people I would have known if I hadn't been doing this work. Yeah. And I love that. It's very fulfilling to honor people who, in almost every case, are not well known outside their family and circle of friends, and shine a light on that. I love it. It's good stuff.
So what was the inspiration for the book?
I have to be honest about what sparked the thought of writing the book were these very long hikes. Which sounds like, what?
There's another reinvention that Diane went through, not just the career. Tell us about that.
Well, I hiked with my brothers in the Sierra Mountains in California when I was in high school. I had not hiked since then until I picked it up again in my late 50s. So that is a reinvention.
Yeah.
But I have to say, what sparked writing the book called The Waypoints, and there are other books with that word in there. So I have to say The Waypoints from 400 Farewells. And now you know what the farewells are all about. And 3,000 miles. What sparked the writing of the book was hiking. Because, and I think anyone can relate to this, if they get out into nature at all, even if it's, frankly, a local park and you're out there for an hour or so, it doesn't have to be this extreme that I'm just going to briefly describe. Nature, and John Muir, the great conservationist, was the one who said this, scrubs us clean. It washes the spirit clean. Very many people who wouldn't describe themselves even as religious, or maybe wouldn't even describe themselves as particularly spiritual, will pause and say, yeah, I feel different when I'm out in nature. I feel better. I feel more balanced. So when I was spending time deep in nature for days at a time, I started to have a different perspective on my own life and the next chapter I would be approaching, being retirement. But it was also a different perspective on all these lives that I had pondered and honored. And what I started to see was an overlap between the insights and, if you will, lessons from these lives. Lessons to me personally, just sort of perspectives like that life was cool. That person did that really well. I mean, just something inspiring.
Yeah.
Was overlapping with what I was learning hiking, usually from my mistakes. I'll give you an example.
Yes, please.
Example anybody could relate to, whether they were backpacking or not, because let's admit, most people are not backpackers. So, and that is the phrase travel lightly. If you're backpacking, you cannot carry everything from your house on your back while you're going over a mountain pass. Anybody would know that. You cannot carry everything. And the more you carry, you will get physically hurt. Your body will hurt. So you pare down to what's essential when you're backpacking. It's a necessity for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any adult certainly knows, and some children do too. I just spent a lot of time with some kids this weekend. Their hurts or disappointments or frustrations. Maybe you were treated unfairly so that you're legitimately angry for a little bit. There is weight like that we carry as we go through life, that it's in our best interests to try to put behind us, put to rest so you can move on. And I know from personal experience and from observation that if you don't put some of that stuff down, it weighs you down into the ground and you don't move forward. You get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You get stuck. I didn't want to be stuck. The 3,000 miles, I guess I should say to your listeners, is I hiked from Mexico to Canada, which is on the Continental Divide Trail, is 3,100 miles. Whew. And I just rounded down.
Is it all on the mountains?
No, great question. Because a lot of people assume if it's the Continental Divide that it is. When you start in New Mexico, you're starting in the desert, and it's a long while before you get to mountains, specifically before you get to the Rocky Mountains. But somewhere in the upper third of New Mexico, you are going up into the mountains. And that's where you are for a long time. You go down a bit in the Great Divide Basin in the middle of Wyoming, or the southern Wyoming. But when you start in the desert near New Mexico, you don't see the mountains for a while.
How long did it take you to do that? And did you do it all in one trip, or did you break out, or how many?
I'm too old to do it in one trip.
Break it out over?
I'm too old to do it in one trip, Kevin. So at first I hiked the Colorado Trail, and I realized many of your listeners are not in this state. But obviously, anybody knows anything about Colorado, there are a lot of mountains. So I started with a Colorado portion of the mountains. And when I finished that, I decided I'm going to keep going, which is a singularly naive thing to say. And I knew it at the time. But to answer your question is, I started when I was still working full time.
Oh, wow.
So there was no way I could do it in one jaunt because I only had like 3 weeks of vacation, and this wasn't going to happen in that period of time. So the people who are what they call through hikers, they do it in one chunk. And that takes between 4 and 6 months, usually 4 to 5 months. I would not have had a job if I left.
Where'd Diane go? We haven't seen her in a while.
You got to replace her. So when I started out, I was only hiking maybe 100 miles in a summer.
Just 100 miles.
300
no biggie.
at most. I saved up all my vacation and any kind of leave I could scramble together. Not sick leave. I was honest about this, but I collected, I guess is the word. I collected all the leave I could. At one point, I even took a month's leave of absence.
Wow.
Right. But after a while, as I was nearing retirement, I was very fortunate that I was in a situation where I was, frankly, replacing myself in the full-time role. Very smart thing to do. Replace yourself. So I was still very valuable to them, but I also knew I was getting closer to the part in my life when I would retire. So I hired my team of celebrants. I hired them. I trained them. One of them became the director of the program I was in. And now I could take more time. And just at first, I was a part-time employee, and then I was an independent contractor. So while I was pulling back from the hours at work, I was advancing in the hours I was hiking. This was extremely focused, is that I wanted to finish that trail before I turned 70. I started at the age of 61. Mind you, this is a Continental Divide. Most of it's mountains, except for New Mexico. You're not up there in the wintertime or the spring when there's heavy snowpack and avalanches. So this is a summer occupation if you're a section hiker, which is what I was. So I started my commitment to hiking the Continental Divide at the age of 61. I finished in 2023 at the age of 67.
That's amazing.
I made it.
Did you do it solo? Did you have different companions on different parts?
No, I did not do it all solo. And I'll tell you how it split up. And I didn't plan this in advance, but I at the end backed up and said, I need to answer that question because it's a common and excellent question. It turned out that I hiked 1,100 miles of it by myself, 1,000 with my oldest brother. I finished at 67. He finished at 77.
Wow.
And 1,000 of the miles with other hikers. And usually people in the back, you might be too polite to say this, but people think that was not safe. Why did she hike 1,100 miles by herself? Most of the time, I could pick the time and location when there would be plenty of other hikers up there.
That's what I was thinking. It's not like there's no one else around.
Right.
They're just not with you.
No. The hikers pour into the mountains in the depths of the summer because that's when there isn't snowpack and the flowers are blooming and it's pretty. And that's when they can go.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Occasionally, I would go a couple days before I saw someone, but honestly, that was rare.
Wow. And you're just sleeping under the stars? Do you have a tent?
Yes,
I am not a hiker.
I have a tent. It's funny. Some people think, well, then you came off the trail at night and went into a B&B. I'm like,
or a motel.
No.
That is not how it works.
This is wilderness hiking primarily. So other trails that people know, Appalachian Trail, there's a lot of towns. And yes, sometimes you're sleeping on the trail in a tent, but other times you can go into a town. The farther north you get on this trail, well, and certainly the very bottom of New Mexico, but the farther north you get, mid Wyoming and north, you'll go more than 100 miles between towns. So you are in wilderness backpacking mode. You're carrying everything you need, which is kind of cool.
That's amazing.
So are you going to come east now and do the Appalachian Trail?
Kevin, will you trail angel for me if I do?
I'm only an hour away from, well, actually probably about 45 minutes away from the trail.
Oh, wonderful. I just threw that term at
absolutely,
you.
Absolutely.
You probably know what it is.
I want the definition.
But the definition, and for all your listeners, a trail angel is someone who aids hikers on long distance trails. And that assistance can take different forms. And now I'm trail angeling. So I trail angel the whole length of the Continental Divide Trail last year in a little camper. But that's a whole other story. Maybe it's another book.
Yeah,
but sometimes the hikers need just water. And I would know where they were going to come out at a place where I could reach them and provide water. They always appreciate a chair to sit on because otherwise they're sitting on the ground. It's amazing how the body appreciates sitting in a chair.
Uh-huh.
Gatorade in order to replenish electrolytes and fresh fruit.
Mm.
Those are the four things, honestly, that I could provide and they needed on the trail. More than candy bars. They always had Snickers in their backpacks. And here I am doing
Snickers are not going to go bad. Yeah. Right?
Or
An
it's
orange
very
or
drying.
a banana's not going to last
If
you.
you're also just out there greeting them, wherever they might be, and they need a ride into town, transportation needs are really common. They need to get into town to resupply, maybe stay in a motel and take a shower, sleep in a bed, get some rest, go back out on the trail. So I've done a lot of transportation.
So you mentioned that a lot of the lessons that you share are learned from your own mistakes. Will you share a mistake with us?
Oh, yeah. One of the bigger mistakes I made was in the Great Divide Basin of Wyoming. And it sounds like it's big, wide, flatter than anywhere else. I thought it's very remote. You're going to go a long ways. I forget how much, maybe 120 miles actually, from bottom to top with no town in there. And I thought, I know how I'll do this. I'll get on my bike. That was a huge mistake. It's also cheating, actually.
I was going to say, this doesn't sound like hiking.
Well, the universe spoke on that choice.
How so?
Which was basically, I was not up for that. I had no experience in cycling, trekking on a bicycle. I practiced, but it's not the same. With the panniers, the heavy panniers. And furthermore, what happened to me is the weather, which is probably the biggest risk of this adventure by far, is what are you going to run into in terms of weather? It had decided to rain a long time before I got there, and the mud stopped me.
Oh.
So I had to stop in the middle of a dirt road out there. And there were lots of hunters. It was fall. So it was hunting season. So there were people going by on these dirt roads. It's just, I wasn't near towns to resupply. And I had to flag down a couple of strangers and say, I didn't even ask them. I just told them I had to get back to Atlantic City, Wyoming, which does not look at all like the Atlantic City that's near
New Jersey
to you all.
Yes. I would imagine not.
I learned from that mistake that sometimes you just have to roll with a change of plans. Admit your mistake, go home, think about it, do it better next time. The thing about this trail that hikers often say is you'll plan really well as best you can. And then the trail will say, yeah, that's not happening. And you have to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
So in the book, and what I talk about that's the overlap is you can plan all you want to, but either by your mistake or just by a change you didn't foresee, you're going to have to adjust. And you need to be wise enough to say, okay, this isn't working. I need to do something different.
And I guess have a little humility, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I went home with my tail between my legs after that experience. It's like, that was really dumb. What was I thinking? Yeah.
But after that, or after some other mistake, at any point did you say, I'm done with this. I'm not going to do this. I'm giving up. Did that ever
I have to say, honest to goodness, there might be times when you say, I'm done with this, but I never said it permanently. Because a change in plans could mean I have gone as far as I can go. I need to get off this trail or I'm going to get hurt. If you get really tired is when you will get hurt, probably. You up the chances of that a lot. So there were times when I gave up and said, I've gone as far as I could go, but I'm getting elevation sickness. I need to get out of here. I need to get down. In that case, I need to get down.
Mm-hmm.
But I never, ever thought I'm giving up on this trail. I never. As a matter of fact, when someone said to me, I don't think you're going to make it, I dug in my heels. I'm like, no way. And I just had to figure out a different way to do it. The thing I learned from this trail about aging is, okay, I couldn't do it like I was 32. And there are some people who try to do it like they're a lot younger than they are. They are. And I've seen those people get injured.
Ugh.
So for me, I did it in a way that was suitable for my physical ability.
Mm-hmm.
And I pushed that, but I never got seriously injured because I was very aware of my body's abilities, or when I needed to say, okay, this is enough. You need to go home now.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I never had to give up completely. I was one determined lady. I was,
Sounds like
you know,
it.
I was not fast. I was not fast, but I was persistent.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Is there a person you have been celebrant for that you want to share a little story from, a life that inspired you?
Oh my gosh, yes. There's many. I hope I don't tear up because I kind of fell in love with some of these lives. There's one young woman. She had a degenerative eye condition and gradually went completely blind over the course of a life. Not her whole life. She passed away in her early 30s, and she was almost completely blind since she was, I'm going to say half of her life, since she was in her teens. She was one heck of a courageous person. She managed to live self-sufficiently on her own. What was most inspiring to me about her and inspired other people about her name is Anne, is that she had a childhood fear of horses that she decided that she needed to get over that. Now, she lived in Boulder, Colorado. She was not getting around on horseback, nor did she need to. She just decided that this was a fear she wanted to get over. Meanwhile, she was hiking with her dad. He would be in front of her, and she could feel where he was that let her know if they were going up or going down, or I don't know how the heck she did it. And the two of them were also on a tandem bike and rode this bike with her in the back. Of course, he's out front steering for several thousand miles.
Wow.
I think it was over 20,000 miles. When I say several, I mean like knock your socks off.
Yeah.
She was a courageous daredevil, but she decided she needed to get over this fear of riding horses. So she went to a therapeutic riding center and did exactly that. And people watching her, she would pick out the tallest horse in the barn. And when I thought of her, I thought, man, my goodness, I have my physical limits, but I don't have that to contend with.
Right.
And there was a childhood fear I had, and it was of moving water, fast moving water, because of various events very, very early in my childhood. And I'm sorry, but you don't hike from Mexico to Canada without having to cross rivers.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. I don't mean just creeks. I mean rivers. And especially if you're near Yellowstone.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, Anne inspired me. It's like, I have to cross this river. I have to come to terms with this. I have to do it as safe as I can. And there's a way to do that. There's a skill to do that. But I just had to dig deep and do it. And I did. I just came away with a new respect for it. But what was said about Anne at her memorial gathering, it was not said by me, it was by someone else, but I latched onto that, was you don't build courage by avoiding what you're afraid of. You build courage by moving through it.
Mm.
I literally physically had to move through it.
Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, that's what I mean about being inspired by other people's lives. I was inspired by other people's lives. I was inspired by the simplicity and directness of nature. And I'll say this about people approaching retirement is most of us looking back at our work life, it wasn't a bed of roses, right? I mean,
Right.
It wasn't all good and success and I got what I wanted and probably not.
Right.
But I can say when I go out in nature, nature is fair. It's tough, but it makes no distinctions.
Mm-hmm.
And that I noticed right away. Not even sure I said that in my book. Maybe that's another book. Does that make sense? It's like, here's this mountain. It doesn't care if you're 87, 77, or 67, or 17.
Yeah.
Let's see what you got. What do you got?
Right. Or a rainstorm's going to hit everybody the same.
Exactly. I found that kind of refreshing. It's like, let me see what I got. I don't have to compete with anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to apologize to anybody else. I'm out here on my terms and the mountain's terms. We're going to see what I got. It's okay.
Diane, thank you so much for sharing with us today and for sharing in your book. Let people know how they can follow you or find your book.
Well, thank you. The book is kind of everywhere online with the big online book retailers, of course, including Amazon, Barnes and Noble, many of them. If it's a favorite bookseller, you can find it there. It's called The Waypoints from 400 Farewells and 3,000 Miles. And you can also contact me through information that's in that book. I'm happy to be in touch with people. And I have a Substack that's just diane.gansauer@substack.com. I don't write in it as often anymore as I did when I was working out the book, but I'm sharing stories that have happened since. For example, as a trail angel, it's kind of fun. It's free. Just pass by any fictitious paywall. I'm happy to have readers.
Delightful. Well, thank you again.
This was fun. I hope your listeners take some inspiration from a semi-old lady out there still going.
I am.
Make your own story. Make your own story.
Well, hopefully it gives me the inspiration. It's been about 30 years ago, I read Bill Bryson's book about hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I'm going to do that. I never got off my ass. But now listen to you. Maybe it's going to inspire me again. That thing is, I know myself. Late. I'm not holding my breath. Please don't hold me to
account. Go out and do a day or two.
A few days.
But yeah, I mean, it's got me thinking again. I'm not going to lie.
Get in touch. I'll give you some gear advice.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
I'll need it. Thank you.
All right. Happy to.
Well, I got to say, Stephanie, that was actually a fun conversation. A few things stuck with me. Probably one of the last things that she said, talking about how it doesn't matter what other people are or what they're doing, it's between you and the mountain.
Yeah.
And that really sums up your retirement. I mean, yes, if you have a spouse, then yeah, they kind of come into the conversation, but who cares how your neighbor's living their retirement, or your sibling or your parents, or what your kids think you should be doing?
Right.
It's what do you want to do? And it's the mountain, just you and the mountain. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm. And it was such an interesting challenge that she set for herself. She wasn't just going to go hiking every so often. She was going to do this whole dang trail, no matter what occurred, and adjusting and being humble about it. Right. I think that was a good lesson too. Yeah, I'm going to do this, but not like a young person. I'm going to do it like me, which was really cool. But what stuck with me more is her reinvention. And she said she became, I think she said, a more effective and a happier person when she left behind the big public position with the high responsibility and went into these very personal, just her and a family situations, learning about someone's life, learning how to tell stories effectively and really honor that person. That was really moving.
Yes, and it was. I mean, and that can't but help but change you, hopefully for the better. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, that's clearly going to be impactful.
Yeah.
And earlier on, she was talking about, and I think this was also key, that she was honest and aware enough with herself to say, what do I like about my job now? I like working with people, the individuals. And that awareness, I guess you would say, made her open when she saw the ad on the back of a magazine.
Right. Yep.
And she took her shot, and it turned out to be a fantastic match for her.
Yep. And she said she's never made that much sense and she doesn't care. Love that, Diane. Right? I mean, yes, you have to run some numbers maybe and have an awareness of your financial situation, but money's not everything, right? Yes, we're financial planners and it's not all about the money. It's all about living a life that is meaningful to you and brings you joy and fulfillment.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Diane. We'll talk to you next time. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from her.
Be sure to subscribe to the show and please share it with your friends. Show notes and more information available at takebackretirement.com. investmentadvice.com. Huge thanks for the original music by the one and only Raymond Loewy through New Math in New York. See you next time.
Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group, American Financial Management Group, and Sofia Financial are separate entities. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. This information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized tax advice. Please consult your tax advisor regarding your specific situation.